I'm sure you all have seen a computer, whether it comes in the form of a laptop, a big PC, or a thin and light smartphone. But what exactly is a computer? Well, it's an electronic machine that can be used to perform a variety of tasks. So, all computers do a couple of things. They take input, they store it, they process it, and then they output it. So, let's analyze a situation when you're playing a game. So, you hit the up key. So, the computer takes that as input. As with the keyboard, you're giving something to the computer. Right? From outside, you're giving some information to the computer. So, that acts as input. So, then the computer has to store it so that it remembers that, oh, you pressed the up key, right? And it needs to do something about it. So then that's done. Now it needs to process it. So, it needs to find out what this does. So, it turns out that makes you go forward. So, now it has to output it. So, in whatever your game you're playing, now your character will move forward. So, a computer uses binary to store data. This is basically only using ones and zeros to store anything you tell the computer. They are really useful and powerful. And with coding, you can control them and do many, many great things. So, why did computers even get invented? Well, humans have always invented tools to help us do tasks, like moving, eating, and all that sorts of stuff. Like way back when, our ancestors made a rock to get food. And they sharpened it so that it would be more effective in getting that chicken that they really wanted to eat. Then, our ancestors, just a couple hundred years ago, made the car so that it would be much easier for them to move around. Just like this, computers were invented so that people could do virtual tasks like math, science, and all that sort of stuff. So, then the computer came in. And, good enough, the computer solves all of those things and is much faster at doing things like math and intensive calculations than humans. So, believe it or not, you use computers every single day. And they're an important part of your daily life, and they're parts of lots and lots of things. First, let's take a look at cell phones. I'm sure that most people's parents would have one. And in a lot of Apple phones, each year they talk about the new A12 bionic chip and how much more powerful it is. And this is the CPU, and this is the thingy that runs the phone. This is the central processing unit, which CPU stands for. It is the brain of the computer, and it gets exponentially better each year. So, with coding, you can harness the incredible power of these processors. Now we get to laptops. And these are much more powerful than phones, because they are in fact much bigger. They are still quite portable, but they are much more powerful because you can fit lots more stuff into the bigger body. So, you might have heard of the new Intel i9 chips. Well, this is the same thing as the cell phone A12 Bionic equivalent, but it is much bigger and much more powerful. Again, this is a huge step forward than last year's i7 and is miles faster. In a lot of powerful laptops and even smaller laptops, there are GPUs. Well, what these do is they process all of the graphics, hence their name, graphics processing units. The smaller the laptop is, the smaller GPU you can fit in it. And the bigger it is, you can fit gigantic GPUs, which will make your performance for games and just general usage miles and miles better. Now we have PCs. These are personal computers. They are quite big and might be a few feet tall. So, these are the computers' attainable powerhouses. There are supercomputers, but those cost immense amounts of money and are truly gigantic, so no one's really going to have it inside of their house. These PCs, though, they are built for performance with gigantic GPUs with 2 or more huge fans to keep those powerful units cooled. They are very powerful and can be used to perform very loading and heavy tasks. Now we have printers, and believe it or not, these have little computers in them. These computers control what the computers do. They control how the printer prints that picture and where all of the colors go. Now, we have computers in calculators as well. These are used to help you do complex math. In that little computer, you can do all sorts of crazy math problems, like 3 times 188 plus 2. And it will do this in a split second. So, all of these are computers. But what makes them a computer? Well, they are a couple basic parts. First, we have the CPU, which in this case, in this Raspberry Pi, is right over here. A CPU stands for the central processing unit, and it is the brain of the computer. It does most of the intense processing. Then we have the memory, which in this case is this little black square over here. What the memory does is it allows the computer to store data. So, in our example earlier, we've said that computers had to take data as input, store it, process it, and then output it. So, the memory is what is used for storage, and the CPU is used to process it. Now we have the things for input and output. So, in this Raspberry Pi, you can see there's lots and lots of different ports. All of these ports are used for input-output, or I/O. So, if you have a keyboard, then you would connect it up to one of these ports, and then you could give the computer input. And then you have another USB, and you want to connect that to a mouse. So you can give it a different kind of input. Then the computer has to do the output. So with another port, you can use it to connect the screen so that the computer can tell you things. Now, there are a couple of different kinds of memory. There's the RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory. And this is just, like we said, when the computer needs to just briefly remember stuff so that it can process it, it just goes to the RAM. But the RAM has a downside. Whenever your computer is turned off, everything that's in the RAM is completely lost. But there's another kind of memory, which is the hard drive or the disk drive. This does not go away if you turn off the computer. It stays with you. So it's useful for when you have to store data for your applications, videos, photos, games, and all that stuff. So let's start out with our first quiz. What are the 4 things that all computers do? Pause it here, and after some time I will give you the answer. Well, all computers do these 4 things. They take data as an input, they store that data, they process that data with the CPU, which is the brain of the computer, and then they output the data so that you can get your results back. For the next quiz, what are the 3 parts of a computer? Pause here and think your way through this question, then unpause and hear the answer. So, all computers have 3 parts. A CPU, the brain, which stands for Central Processing Unit, the memory, where it stores things, and the input-output, where it can get data and it can give data to you.